Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 158th episode of the Simple Sophisticate. Today I have a guest who I thoroughly enjoyed having a conversation with, an artist, an author. She's going to take us to France and remind us of all the everyday things that are just truly beautiful in their own unique, natural way. Before I get to the interview, I want to quickly remind you the questions have kept coming in for the episode of Ask Shannon on June 26th. If you have a question for me, maybe it's about France. In fact, I just received a question about Paris and where to visit. Maybe you have some specific questions about France or learning the language, or maybe your questions are about life and those tools that you're trying to acquire to reach your full potential. Or maybe it's not about any of those two things. Maybe it's about style and fashion and finding your own signature style. Whatever it is, send me your questions, and on the 26th of June, I will answer them. Make sure you email them to me by June 21st, and perhaps you and your question will be mentioned and answered on the air. And now I want to get to today's interview. Perhaps you've seen her pottery, simple, purposefully imperfect, white with black singular font, whether for your morning teacup, the salt and pepper holder on the stovetop, or a dish for your furry best friend. Rae Dunn's passion for simple and functional pottery has brought her deserved recognition, and it is with her eye for the simple everyday that led to her new book of French inspiration titled France, Inspiration du Jour. An artistic sketchbook of Rae's travels through Paris and Provence, you will become swept away to France no matter where you live as you peruse the pages, with pictures of everyday life in France paired with watercolor illustrations of the scenery, food and drink, and daily activities. Discover why Rae finds beauty in the everyday moments. Today on the podcast, Rae Dunn joins me to talk about how the concept of the sketchbook came about, why it's important not to overthink anything you are curious to try or explore, and rather just step forward and feel your way, the power of serendipity, the realization of where true beauty resides, and the importance of treasuring the imperfect. The discussion is one with a successful woman who simply followed what she loved, and in so doing created a successful business, which reminds us all to notice and appreciate the small, everyday things. Have a listen to the interview and discover more than a few simple pleasures at the end of our conversation as Rae reveals this week's petit plaisirs. My guest today is an artist and author known nationwide for her ceramics and now her watercolor illustrations and photographs of Provence as well as Paris in her new book, France, Inspiration du Jour, full of simple, dreamy depictions of the food, landscapes, and pastimes experienced along her exploration and compiled in one beautiful travel sketchbook. Readers will be given the gift of escape to France as they peruse each page. I am excited to welcome to the podcast, Rae Dunn. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. It's a pleasure.
Well, your new book just came out early May, just last month. Actually, yeah, when this airs, we will be in June. So in the first week of May. Mm-hmm. And one of the aspects that I really enjoyed most was that it felt like a scrapbook or a picture diary of sorts. And to just give listeners an example, there's one page where you paint a picture of a bottle of rosé that you had enjoyed in Provence with the label, "One of the best bottles of rosé I have ever had." And then you add commentary of the image of the bottle, and then you also include a picture of the label, the actual label. As an artist, what prompted this project and this approach for this book?
Well, I mean, it actually is my journal/diary. And it was never, ever intended to be a book or for anyone to see but me. Well, these journals or sketchbooks started because when I was traveling many years ago in Spain, my camera was stolen out of my backpack on a train.
That. I love this story. It's beautiful.
And yeah, so I've always carried a journal where I write my thoughts and, things I've done, but it was always just words. So because I didn't have a camera and I wanted to remember something, I just quickly drew it. And it just led to starting to draw in my journals rather than write. And I never thought that I could draw very well, but through this process, I've learned a way to draw, which is like not even to try. Like you just, like my drawings in the sketchbook, most of them are literally done in like less than a minute.
That's what's amazing to me, how they're very accurate, because sometimes you'll have a picture, the actual photograph next to it. And I mean, it's very clear, and you've also labeled it with the color that you're going to go back and watercolor it with. That just is what amazes me. Your talent is very innate and clear, and you can do it that quickly.
Well, it was totally an organic process, and it became the way I draw. But honestly, like the quicker you draw something, the better it is. Okay. For me, it was.
So not to overthink it, in other words.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Well, and getting to know you a little bit more online as I was researching for our interview, I've noticed, or I learned, that you are someone who's drawn to simplicity and you appreciate Mother Nature. And
yes.
So I'm curious, what do you find empowering about keeping it simple, and how do you live simply in our world today, this 21st century?
I know it's very hard these days, but I've just always been very simple, and I don't like a lot of stuff around me. I mean, I feel like the world, there's so much clutter out there in the world. Mm-hmm. Like when I walk into my house, I want to just be quiet and, not have so many distractions. But I don't know, I've always been attracted to very simple things.
Okay. Well, and that's one of the things with regards to your ceramics. I know that some of my listeners, or a lot of my listeners, are going to maybe not recognize your name at first, but when they see the pictures of your ceramics, they're going to know exactly who you are, because I recognize them immediately. They're very simple. They're purposefully imperfect and absolutely unique. That approach, where did that come from? So is it from just wanting to not have clutter? I know you've been doing pottery for a long time. Was that your approach when you began as well?
Well, when I began pottery, I just took a random class like at a public art center.
Okay.
And, the point of the pottery class was to learn how to throw on the wheel. And I was just never attracted to that perfect thing you get from throwing on a wheel. And so hand building was my technique that I fell in love with. And I loved seeing my marks just from my fingerprints in the clay.
Okay.
And I can remember my teachers, like saying that, no, you need to get out the fingerprints. But that's what I was drawn to. I like things that look like someone made it. So I love imperfections, and I've always loved imperfections ever since I was a child.
Really? Oh, interesting. Okay. I'm curious, what was it that you found in imperfections that a perfect or seemingly perfect something couldn't provide?
Oh my God. Well, I can remember being tiny, like maybe 3 or 4 years old when, you're very small. Yeah. And being at eye level of women's thighs. Oh, okay. And I loved cellulite and like ruddy skin with freckles. I thought it was so beautiful. Like I thought cellulite and jiggly skin was so beautiful. And that's like an imperfection that people try to correct. But why? I mean, it just, things like that have more character, I think.
They're more real.
Yeah, and it's more interesting.
And they're definitely unique to that woman or that individual.
Yes, yes. I found them to be like beauty marks. Like,
Ah,
I don't
that's a
know. I
shift.
was just drawn to that kind of imperfection.
Well, and I think that's good food for thought, just in general, just this idea of looking at something through more of a positive lens rather than I've got to get rid of this, I've got to change this. Yeah,
Right.
I think that would be a much more productive way to approach everyday life.
Well, it's like the world tells you what's beautiful, and the world shouldn't tell you. Like, you should decide for yourself what you find attractive.
Well, and I'm curious, you travel a lot.
I do.
Is this kind of a perspective, something that you've gained from travel? Or how did you come to be appreciative of beauty that's undefinable or beauty that doesn't have a set definition, I guess I should say?
I don't know. I mean, for me, travel. I've always been drawn to travel because there's just so much out there to see.
There really
You know,
is.
and I love being in a new place and a new culture, and there's just endless amounts to see in this world. And I think it's for me. I could never just stay in one place and not see. I mean, I know a lot of people don't travel and they're fine with it. But for me, I just want to see as much as I can see in the world.
And there's just endless places and
Endless,
people,
yes,
and it's progressing and changing every year. So when you do return to the same place, it's changed or something's different.
definitely.
Your book is about your travels in France. So I'm curious, when was your first visit to France, and when did you, because you return often, what was it that you became enamored by, I guess, by this country?
My first trip to France was in the early 90s, maybe 1995.
Okay.
I just fell in love with the landscape and the way of life, just everything. Like the linens, the like I love going to the flea markets and just the way of life.
I can completely understand what you appreciate with regards to their way of life. It's more of this in the moment, savoring the everyday. At least that's how I feel when I'm there.
Right.
That seems to be what is depicted in many of your paintings and drawings in the book. And one of them, what I love about this book is that for me, it's magical in the sense that it is every day, but it reminds me of my time there, and it gives me ideas of what. Oh, that's right. I can remember, that particular piece of fruit or a fruit at that particular market. And the one image that I want to talk about really quickly is your scattering of the green chairs that are throughout all the different parks, but specifically in the book, you paint one at the Garden of Luxembourg. And it's just that every day going on with the people wandering because it's juxtaposed next to a picture at the garden. My question is, what is your eye drawn to when it comes to inspiration to, oh, I'm going to snap a photo, or I'm going to sketch this scene, or sketch this small item? What is it that kind of clicks and you're like, oh, I've got to capture this?
Well, it's kind of hard to put into words because it's more of a feeling.
Okay.
Like when I see something that I want to draw, usually it's the shape of it or the color. It's really hard to put into words. It's just a feeling.
It's a feeling. And you
Yeah.
clearly listen to yourself. I think that's something.
Yes.
You seem probably quiet to yourself and listen to what is speaking to you.
Yes.
Since you have been in France often, and my readers are always curious to learn of new places to visit or explore, do you have a recommendation of a destination, a cafe, or a museum that others should definitely check out the next time they visit?
Well, I love the French Riviera, like Nice and Cannes and Antibes. Antibes. My favorite museum is the Picasso Museum in Antibes. It's right on the Mediterranean Sea, and it's small, and I love it there. I could live there.
It sounds like that would be very unique. I've never been to the south of France. I'm curious to go, so thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you a few questions about your business in the sense of your journey, because I think a lot of us, we see the end result of success with so many different people in this world, but especially with women, we don't always see behind the scenes and what it really takes. So I'm curious, you have carved your own path. You've built your name and your brand based on what you love. How did this journey begin for you?
Well, the journey towards ceramics was totally organic. I just randomly took this ceramics class because I was in Golden Gate Park and I saw this beautiful building that looked like a little castle to me. And it turned out to be this public arts place called Sharon Art Studio.
Okay.
And so I went in there and I was like, I just have to be in this building. So I randomly signed up for a class by flipping a coin, literally to decide between glass and ceramics.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Both of which I had never touched clay until then. So anyway, the coin landed on ceramics and I took the class and immediately fell in love with clay. And it just slowly took over my life until it became my life.
So you just listened and followed, it sounds like.
Yes.
I love that's trust with life and trusting life. I think that's something, instead of planning everything out. And I mean, not to say there's anything wrong with planning to some degree, but I think there's something to be said for feeling your way too.
Yes, and serendipity plays a huge role in my life.
Okay. How can you share an example? I mean, that was an example right there. Is there another one that comes to mind that on reflection, you can't quite believe it, or you're pinching yourself that it actually happened?
Oh my God, there's so many, I don't even know where to begin. But it's just like running into the right person on the street and something happens.
It sounds like with regards to running into people, and then it's taking advantage of that opportunity when it presents. I think that's a huge part of serendipity, is recognizing a beautiful moment when it happens on accident and seizing it.
Right, and letting it happen rather than pushing it away.
Oh, there you go, letting it happen. Yeah, and not demanding more than what it can give, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about just going with the flow and the energy in the world.
Beautiful. You're giving me a lot to think about. I have a quote that you describe on your website. Your approach to art is a way for you to embrace the joyful, spontaneous elements of daily life that seem to be wanting in so much of what we do. Can you explain a little more what that means?
It's basically like noticing and appreciating the small things in life.
Okay.
For me, like I'm not speaking for everyone, but for me, just noticing and appreciating the small things and being authentic and, finding joy in everyday things.
And there's so much of that. We sometimes don't realize how wealthy we are with regards to that.
Yeah. I feel like I was born in the wrong era because I love just primitive, living off the land, just enjoying being alive and, not filling it with physical things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Not trying to, as you talked about earlier, clutter or suffocate what's.
Yeah. And just being joyous and being joyful in what you do. Like, if I was at a job that I didn't want to be at, it would, what's the point?
Yeah. That's a good food for thought in the sense of we're not here.
No, and the happier you are doing something, the happier person you are and the happier life you have.
I absolutely agree with that. And the happier those that you work with or spend your life with.
Exactly.
Yeah, the energy.
Like if everyone in this world was truly happy, it would be a magnificent place.
Yeah. Yes, I think there would be a lot more joy rather than a seeking of something outside of ourselves.
Right, and the happiness has to start from within, I think.
Absolutely. I have one final question for you. Your book is really as you've described, I think in the description or with regards to what I observed, a collection of those, just as you said, everyday moments that you just appreciate and savor. And so I know this may be a Sophie's Choice kind of a question, but in your book, you share these images from Provence and Paris. What is a favorite, simple, everyday pleasure that you enjoy, whether it is in France or in California? What would be one of your favorite, simple, everyday pleasures?
Honestly, there's so many I don't even know where to begin. But
That's a good problem, Rae. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I can start listing things like playing the piano. Like I play the piano every day, and I could spend the entire day playing the piano.
Okay.
Or going to a cafe and having coffee and writing in my journal, like the words in my journal, or going somewhere new and sketching. Like when I'm sketching these sketchbooks, I'm literally walking down the street. It's like I don't sit down to sketch. I'm out doing my thing, and if I see something, I pull out my sketchbook and draw it. I'm never without a sketchbook and a pen. And I have a whole library filled with these sketch journals, from everywhere I travel.
Well, that would be a beautiful library of an archive. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. And
I love finding things on the street and putting them in the book.
Okay. Well, and you've done a few of those. I know that in the book. There was a cup that was just left, a cup and saucer that was just left on the table at a cafe. And how did you describe it? I'm looking it up now. But just a perfect image.
It was actually at someone's house I was visiting.
Oh, that was what. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Okay. It was at someone's house. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And it was just in the kitchen. I'm sure, it was their coffee that they were drinking. They drank from. It was,
And yeah, it's beautiful. One little crack.
Yeah, and the napkin there. I just thought it was so beautiful. Like you can't style that if you try.
So you didn't touch that at all. That's just
did not touch. I walked by and just shot a picture of it.
Oh, well, that's again, inspiration is everywhere, really, isn't it?
It is.
We just have to look
it's everywhere
and pay attention. Rae, thank you for joining me today, and congratulations on this book.
Thank you.
It's
so
unique,
much.
And I think the readers will be pleasantly impressed and surprised, and whether it's that they love France or food or simply just appreciate the gifts of travel, I think they're going to savor this one.
Thank you. Oh, and also I want to say that anyone can do this. And that's what I hope people take away from this book, is that we're all artists. We're born artists, and anyone could keep a sketchbook and anyone can draw.
I hope you're right. I know I can't draw very well, but I haven't really tried that hard. So I think that's the thing. We just need to try. So,
well, no, you don't have to try. You just have to do it.
Okay, there you go. Just do it. Pencil to paper, pen to paper.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that motivation or inspiration to just give it a shot.
Yeah, everyone should do it.
A good thought to end on. For the show notes for today's interview, for links to Rae Dunn's new book, France, Inspiration du Jour, as well as her website, where to shop her pottery, where to follow her, and I highly recommend following her on Instagram as she has a new illustration every single day. Be sure to stop by the show notes at thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 158. Thank you for tuning in. I do hope you enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, or many Petit Plaisirs, courtesy of Rae Dunn, and have a beautiful week enjoying those everyday simple luxuries that surround us, probably more than we even realize until we pay attention. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. To stay caught up on the most recent podcasts, blog posts, and receive exclusive news as well as an extra dose of inspiration, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's weekly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox each Friday to enjoy with a hot cup of tea or your morning coffee, just in time to jumpstart the weekend. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonne journée!